President Muhammadu Buhari has disclosed that some foreign countries are sponsoring the insecurity, definitely Nigeria, saying their mission is to destroy the country. President Buhari, who made this statement in Kano State, accused some foreign countries of causing mayhem in Borno State and the Lake Chad region so as to take control of the crude oil reserves there. The president commended Borno State Governor Babagana Zulum for his performance in the state, adding that those behind the insecurity knew that Borno was potentially a rich state. Joining us now to talk more on this issue is security consultant Darlington Umoru. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
My pleasure. Compliments.
Same to you, that's true. Right. Does this statement coming from the president, what do you make of it in the first place? And does it seems the president know these people? And if he knows them, how is it that we are not addressing this matter, seeing that he has an information that could help us at addressing the matter of insecurity?
The statement is not new. It's not the first time we're hearing this kind of statement. Army chiefs in the past have made this kind of statement. Some governors have also made this kind of statements, but something is missing.
What is that?
I have often said that when you want to talk about persons, you have the security, the intel report at the tip of your fingers. You should be able to, if they are foreigners or foreign governments or foreign persons, there's a window to be used, tackling all of that. That's the diplomatic window,
Absolutely.
which you're supposed to use. But when you come out to tell your people that foreigners are responsible for the magnitude of insecurity in your country, and I don't think that's good enough for me. Now, we've tried to x-ray where we've had insecurity to the magnitude it got in Nigeria. One, is it the conspiracy of not selling you equipment to battle insecurity? Is it at the level of sponsoring them financially? Is it at the magnitude of sponsoring them with equipment? Is it their ties? We know the tie ISWAP, for instance, has with ISIS. We know Boko Haram, the tie Boko Haram has with Nigerians. Okay, particularly when you look at the origin of Boko Haram, the genesis, and all of that. So if you want to look at it from these various angles, you begin to wonder exactly what Mr. President is referring to. Is he referring to all of this as a whole? And how much has the government done to addressing all of those matters? But Mr. President telling us what we have heard over time, to me, it's not news. It's not news. If you look at the fall of Libya, the presence of foreign countries, particularly in the West and America, in their interest in Africa, particularly looking at Africa as the biggest market, the continent, where there's perhaps a struggle between China and America, between China and the West, who takes over the continent of Africa. You look at the fall of Gaddafi, a part of Africa. Why did he fall? He was promoting and propagating certain policies that wouldn't have favored certain other continents of the world. He was talking about a common currency.
Yes.
He was talking about a common market. He was talking about a common bank. And then he was talking about control. We don't have the control on the continent of Africa. We don't speak. Africa is bigger than some other continents put together, particularly those of them who control the world today. But how much of that have we been able to use? Trickle it down to Nigeria. Nigeria is supposedly seen as the bigger brother of the other country in the continent. But how much of all of that have we been able to use? How much of that have we been able to use to influence the other parts of the world? Well, we saw recently the interest of Niger and Chad, wanting to project Nigeria as their leader Is that affecting any other, the foreign countries Mr. President is referring to? We need specifics. In the area of not some of these countries not selling equipment to us, it's not their problem. It's the problem of the sub-region, ECOWAS.
So the question is, who are these foreign powers? Are these foreign powers as in coalition of armed groups that some governments have given a wink and a nod? Or is it specific nations who are enemies of Nigeria?
Well, that apparently should come from those.
So that aspect of it is not. It's still
been
news.
missing.
We don't know.
It's been missing. You remember within us locally, we've also had statements in that direction when governors will tell us that they know those who are behind Boko Haram and all of that insurgency in the northeast,
yes,
and then in the northwest as well. But I have said it often here in this studio and some other studios that it is not enough for you to make statements, bogus statements, without specifics. If you know these persons, go after them.
That's the issue. If
you know these persons, go after them. I'll give you an instance that had to do with the BDCs and movement of monies, even from outside the country to sponsoring some of these insurgents. What happened when UAE got about 6 of them? America ended up publishing those names and putting them in the black book. And then they were arrested, prosecuted, and jailed in the UAE. And then those who were recipients of the funds, the BDCs and all of that in Nigeria, what happened to them? Up until this minute, I do not have those facts.
They said they were going to name them at some point, that the name will be made public.
Was it just about naming them? Were they arrested? These persons were arrested in foreign land to help curb the movement of money or monies into Nigeria for the sponsorship of
insurgency,
terrorists. And then those who were recipients of those money in this country, because the transaction was done, Giaba, a body of the ECOWAS, about a year today, told us that the transaction ISWAP had in 1 year was about 18 billion, $36,000 million. And these transactions were done within and outside. How much of this were they able to track down? Talking about the Nigerian government now. And then my challenge to Giaba ECOWAS now was, if you had a way of tracking all of this, did you share this intel with the Nigerian government?
Is it possible they wouldn't have done that?
If they had shared it, the Nigerian government would have reacted.
Well, maybe they didn't want to react. That's the reaction we are seeing from the president. Just complaining in public.
That is it.
Almost like a simple thing. Is this so much that they know who they are, but they discover that there's nothing we can do about it?
Sorry, 1 second. There's no way you will not have anything to do with them. You are an independent country. You have your security arrangement. You also have the World Court.
So why we don't have
you need evidence. They say follow the money. If you follow the money, then you find out the individuals. And if you get the individuals, you get out their connections, their groups. From the groups, you know their countries. You know everything about them. The point is, it looks like we know everything, but we don't want to do anything.
Is that what it is?
Well, I don't want to subscribe to that. But I see us as, for instance, if you want to take, as an instance, the case of the 6 Nigerians that were arrested in UAE, prosecuted and jailed. It didn't stop at that point. They had evidence they produced at the appeal court, that beyond reasonable doubt, that before they were convicted. And then they had links to those they transacted with in Nigeria. But their laws didn't allow them to come to Nigeria to also deal with those of them here. They limited it to those of them who did the transaction from their country, based on intel provided by Saudi Arabia and the UAE itself, a combination of those two. Like you rightly described intel, you follow up to the end. and then you get at where the genesis, the source of these things, and then the receiver, the recipient at the end of the day. And then all of this you bring together. Okay? What have we been able to do with all of this? That's why I broke it down. I said, what are the areas we are really looking at? Is it the areas of not being, for these countries coming together and not selling equipment to Nigeria because of distrust? Or is it about the policy of ECOWAS that has stopped the importation of equipment to countries for now until you are able to obtain what is called the exemption certificate, which has a process?
Elaborate on that.
The ECOWAS has a policy that all the countries in that region for now cannot import arms.
Yes.
Because some of this, because of these problems of terrorism, these arms getting into the wrong hands. Now, if you must be able to purchase arms, you must go to ECOWAS first. You must write to ECOWAS that will not publish, I think in about 30 days, why you needed those arms.
Yes.
And then there's a group of arms dealers, manufacturers abroad. They will need you to provide that certificate from this region that would have been given to you by ECOWAS before they will now sell equipment to you. That means you have been cleared. That those arms are not actually, will not be going into the wrong hands, and they will be going to the state actors for the prosecution of fighting the terrorists.
Right.
That is what that is about. Now, if we're talking about financing, 18 billion in 1 year transacted in the hands of ISWAP in 1 year, as reported by GIABA, an arm of ECOWAS. These monies transacted through commercial banks and all of that. Well, part of it apparently would have come from the foreign land, just like those who were arrested in Dubai. The UAE, the 6 that were arrested and who pushed in this money into Nigeria. But part of those monies were also what they collected from taxes at the Lake Chad region. Now, if you must fish, you must pay taxes. If you must farm in those regions, you must pay taxes to these people so that they don't come beheading them. And so these were monies generated. And part of those monies were even monies that were stolen. Or money that were gotten from drugs. So at the end of the day, which aspect are we really addressing? Is it all of this as a whole, or some of this in parts?
What is your issue with the ECOWAS demand? You just analyze it. Do you have an issue with that?
There's no
and
issue.
Who is ECOWAS? It is the West African countries that make up ECOWAS.
Yes.
They came up with this rule. I guess there is a reason why they came up with this rule. Then you mentioned distrust. Who against who? Who does not trust who amongst these countries? Is it that they don't trust themselves? What issue do you have with this matter of trust?
Research has shown that sometimes when it's a trend, when a country, for instance, is importing arms from the manufacturers, okay, at the end of the day, what left the table or the factory of the manufacturer may not be the complete number that will get to that country that is importing it. That means along the line there would have been leakages.
Right.
Have you ever pondered over, has it worried you, over time, to say this equipment, these firearms in the hands of these non-state actors, how do they get to them? Beyond the locally manufactured firearms or equipment, what of the factory made? Some are stolen from the state actors. State actors sometimes are killed just to take their firearms. We have seen even at the theater where Nigerian soldiers have lost equipment to some of these terrorists, particularly when they are ambushed. The same way the state actors will recover arms from these non-state actors when they are conquered. Okay, so there has been this report of leakages in between the manufacturers and the recipient, the person who is, the countries or persons who are demanding for this equipment or who have paid. So as a result, there's always, because I'll tell you something, how some of these things are traced. Every equipment manufactured has a code number. And that code will tell you the country where it was manufactured. Okay? And that code is registered. That number and that against that equipment is registered as at the time the purchase was made. Now, if you lose those, if those equipments are found in the hands of the non-state actors or they fall into other wrong hands, the code in those equipment will help the security agents to trace who manufactured them, who bought them, at what time. So it's not a thing of just like tomatoes you bought without trademarks, where even if they fall into the wrong hands, you may not be able to tell who purchased them at what time. The instance I'm giving here is that if Veronica purchased firearms from the manufacturers, it will be, there's a register that will be open, and the codes on those firearms will be registered on that register against your name.
Yeah.
Now, subsequently, those firearms were taken, stolen by whichever means, by the non-state actors, and they are recovered by the security agents at the end of the day. When tracing is done, it will be seen that this firearm was actually purchased by these persons, and the questions will now be, as at the time you lose or lost this firearm, were there proper reports?
That is what breeds distrust.
But even at the end of the day, when you trace it, what do you do about it? That's the most important thing. Because if you catch a person, you know his connections, you know his trail, and so on. Then the point is, what do you do about it? If the president comes and says foreign powers wanted to do something or the other, they couldn't do anything here without complicity. Have we taken care of the home front?
Right.
Those people who are complicit in this evil, have we taken care of the home front? Because they cannot come into your house
if you don't open
don't open your door. And if they want to break in, then you fight them at the door. But in this case, they have entered the house and they know where the Obole is hidden. They know where the Babagana Zulum is kept. So if they do that, how did you know that?
There's a saying in the local parlance that it's the rat in the house that invites the one outside to say there's fish.
There's fish inside this house.
Or in the Babagana soup.
Or the Babagana soup.
There's that saying, and which
it's
is
not only
true.
that, they know how to open the pots.
There are collaborators who are here. The non-state actors. There's a network, a movement of firearms, for instance, or the trade in firearms goes pari passu with the trade in drugs. Okay, sometimes funds are raised from one to sponsor the other. And the crises are sponsored in some of these places sometimes, so that some of these people were able to sell their equipment, market. Sometimes deliberately. Don't ask me for names now. Deliberately, crises are created in some places so that market for equipment will be open and will be created.
There was one time not long ago, that was last year, when they said on a certain Friday that they are going to line up all these terrorists in court. Everybody was waiting. But that has not happened since that time. Maybe they will do it tomorrow. But it has not happened. Over 6 months. So it was over 6 months now that it happened. That they said they're going to line all of them, line all these terrorists, all these people who had connection with all of these networks of evil, that they're going to bring them. And then it never happened. We have not seen any explanation or heard any report that has said this is why they have not come. Where are these people? Who are they? And why have they not been prosecuted?
Where are the BDC members that were also arrested? Where are the sponsors? Over 100 of them that were arrested at a point in time. Investigation is ongoing. Investigation is ongoing. The BDC operators we have known over time that have become vessels or channels for the movement of funds by the sponsors of these terrorists to these terrorists. I keep referring to a living example of those 6 from the UAE. It's a living instance that broke out, that even America got concerned. Now, how many of such have we had again, aside from the one, just, to buttress what you just said?
That was why we asked earlier, is if the government is sincere in its fight at addressing this matter of insurgency in the country or insecurity in the country.
Well, if the government is not sincere, then it will consume it. It will consume it because everybody is in it. Once upon a time in this country last year, we were living witnesses when a group of bandits got so power drunk to the extent of even making statements as their target being the president. And that's We are living witnesses. They got so power drunk. They felt they were untouchable. They felt the government was not concerned. But Mr. President, in between that, gave a marching order to the military and gave them a deadline. And so I want all of this nonsense stuff.
That's the kind of deadline we want to see with this fuel problem. That it should do the same thing with the fuel problem and it will be done. He gave them the deadline. Since that time, many of these bandits have been running away from their
You're talking about bandits. What about the terrorists?
All right.
The Tucanos were deployed.
Yes.
And then we saw that even the terrorists were now running to neighboring countries, Chad and Niger.
Which means it can be done. So we don't need to complain. Just do it.
So how much of all of after that marching order now? How much of today bombing here, bombing there, suicide bombing, kidnapping, and all of that? It dropped.
It dropped significantly. Yes.
And then it is good for the election.
Yeah, we have to leave it now.
Okay,
right.
we're leaving it.
All right, because of time, but we must thank you, security consultant Darlene Tinumoro, for your time on the program.
My pleasure any day.
Right.